Good afternoon. We're convening the second hearing of the Higher Education and Technology Committee today, February 2nd, 2 p.m. via video conference, conference room 309 at the Hawaii State Capitol. We're hearing 5 bills concerning technology today. My name is Amy Prusso. I'm currently serving as chair. And in the room with us, we have Vice Chair. For some reason, it's reverberating. Do you have Zoom on? I don't have Zoom on. We'll wait for a second. Technological issues.
My mixer is all the way down. Wait.
Okay. Also with us, we have Vice Chair Janae Capella, Representative Lisa Martin, Representative Rose Martinez, and Representative Diamond Garcia. So we provided some basic guidelines for participation at our first hearing, and Vice Chair Capella is going to review the highlights.
Thank you for joining us today. In order to allow for as many people as possible to testify, there will be a 2-minute time limit per testifier. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. That's for our Zoom folks. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with the technical staff only, so please use the chat only for technical issues. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits, but please note that the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. And in the event of a network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Please avoid using any trademarked or copyrighted images as your background, and please refrain from any profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior are grounds for removal. That's for Zoom and for our in-person folks. Thanks, back to you, Chair.
Thank you. So we're going to start off with HB 53, which requires manufacturers of digital electronic equipment to make available to owners and independent repair providers on fair and reasonable terms the documentation, parts, and tools used to diagnose, maintain, and repair the equipment. So first up on Zoom, we have John Keene representing the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers in opposition.
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman of the committee. My name is John Keene, the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers, also known as AHAM. We're in opposition to House Bill 53. Our industry covers everything from your refrigerator, clothes washer, and microwave. With that comes the handling of electricity and refrigerant gases. Home appliance repair is very unique in the fact that repairs occur in people's homes. So it's also important to consider that there's important access to your Wi-Fi network as well. Open up the repair process to any third party with significant impact the safety and reliability of the product. It opens up the threat to significant property damage, including instances we have heard from using the wrong refrigerant and using counterfeit parts leading to electric shock. That's why paramount to have authorized repair professionals who is trained to properly handle our products to make sure the customer remains safe. To include, appliances are complex products that require training and accountability. Untrained repairs can compromise safety and security. That is why no state has enacted legislation that covers appliances. With that, I ask you to oppose House Bill 53. Thank you for your time.
Mahalo for your testimony. Next we have Tina Yamaki, Retail Merchants of Hawaii, on Zoom in opposition. Not present. Okay. Moving on to the next testifier. On Zoom we have Darby Gottlieb from the Advanced Medical Technology Association in opposition.
Mahalo, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Darby Gottlieb on behalf of AdvaMed. We are the largest trade association representing the medical technology industry. Our 400 members range from small medical technology startups to large device manufacturers. Today, we are here in respectful opposition to House Bill 53. Patient safety is the top priority for our members, and this legislation unnecessarily exposes patients to risk of harm by requiring medical technology providers to share that proprietary design and repair information with third-party servicers. Oftentimes, these third-party servicers do not have the necessary training to repair these complex medical systems and are not required to follow any of the quality and safety controls required by the FDA. One important thing to note, a 2018 report by the FDA found more than 4,000 adverse events, including 294 serious injuries and 40 deaths from devices repaired by unauthorized third-party providers. We've heard from technicians in Hawaii on the safety risks of unauthorized and untrained service providers repairing equipment. They note that independent providers are not required to use certified replacement parts, which could lead to device malfunction. There's also the risk that these devices are left vulnerable to cyber attacks and viruses if an untrained provider accidentally disables the system security or conducts a software update. Another issue that we hear a lot about is wait times and whether there are enough service providers, but we've also heard from local technicians that response time is not an issue in Hawaii. For most service calls, they can be on site within 30 minutes and within 2 hours to a neighboring island, and this remained true even throughout the pandemic. Legislation at the federal level, as well as in many other states contemplating this, including a bill signed in New York, acknowledge that these are complex devices that require extensive training and provide full exemptions for medical device manufacturers in their laws. Bottom line, doctors, nurses, and patients rely on well-functioning equipment. Safety and security are paramount to our members and the patients that they serve. And for those reasons, we oppose House Bill 53 and look forward to working with the committee and author on our concerns. Thank you.
Mahalo for your testimony. Next up, we have Tara Ryan from the Entertainment Software Association on Zoom in opposition.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you so much for allowing me to testify today. My name is Tara Ryan, and I represent the Entertainment Software Association. ESA represents the U.S. video game industry and the makers of all three video game consoles, Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony. ESA respectfully opposes House Bill 53, which seeks to create a right to repair mandate. A right to repair mandate poses a particularly high risk to video game creators and other copyright owners because they rely on secure media ecosystem of the video game console to safeguard copyrighted works that protect against sophisticated piracy efforts. To prevent content theft, video game software, firmware, and hardware have what is built-in security features, which we call technological protection measures, or TPMs. And these prevent the play of unauthorized video game content, and they prevent access to other content. TPMs create a secure media platform that provides video game publishers, music distributors, and video streaming platforms with the assurances that their intellectual property will be safe and secure. Due to the popularity of video games, there is a thriving modification market that offers hardware, tools, and code to modify game consoles in order to play illegal game downloads from the internet. Being required to share hardware schematics, sensitive diagnostic information, tools, and security-related reset codes with unauthorized third parties would compromise the security of the entire platform, harm console makers and copyright owners. As you guys know, once information is released worldwide, it cannot be clawed back. It's important to mention that federal law, Section 1201 of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, prohibits the trafficking of tools used to circumvent technological protection measures, such as those that protect video game consoles. In its most recent 3-year review, the United States Copyright Office recognized again that video games are highly expressive works, extolled the unique nature of the video game console, and repeatedly stressed the importance of technological protection measures to the video game industry. This decision demonstrates, again, the copyright's continued acknowledgement that access controls on video game consoles uniquely serve the important purpose of preventing copyright infringement. For these reasons, we respectfully oppose House Bill 53 and urge you to vote against it. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we'll hear from Dustin Brighton from Repair Done Right Coalition in opposition on Zoom.
Hi, yes. Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Dustin Brighton and I represent the Repair Done Right Coalition. I appreciate you allowing me to testify today in opposition to House Bill 53. The Repair Done Right Coalition is made up of companies, organizations, and people who care about ensuring that innovative products are repaired and maintained in an authorized manner. These companies assist in connecting consumers, business, and governments through products designed to assist in improving the lives of those who use them. For instance, during the pandemic, these products allowed families to stay connected and work to be done and commerce to be conducted. The Repair Done Right Coalition is opposed to House Bill 53, which would mandate original equipment manufacturers of digital electronic equipment or part of the equipment sold in Hawaii to provide independent repair providers with diagnostic and repair information, software, tools, and parts. We feel like that this practice would increase safety hazards and cybersecurity risks for consumers and businesses while threatening the Hawaiian innovation economy. Most consumer technology products are comprised of complex electronics, which require specialized training and sophisticated test instruments to repair safely. Some types of repairs can even be dangerous. It's particularly important that products containing high-energy lithium-ion batteries are repaired only by trained professionals who understand and can mitigate the hazards associated with installing, removing, or replacing those batteries. Manufacturers just want to ensure that their products are serviced by professionals who are authorized, who understand the intricacies of their products and have spent the time acquiring the knowledge necessary to safely repair them and return them to consumers without compromising their standards or their brands, which they take very seriously. Forcing OEMs to provide unauthorized repair facilities with information on how to bypass consumers' safety locks presents unacceptable risks to consumer data privacy. There has been a recent study that found that privacy violations already occur when consumers seek computer or phone repairs, with technicians accessing customers' personal data at a higher rate. Our members are committed to working with you to promote digital privacy and security while resisting unwarranted intervention in the marketplace with mandates that compromise consumer safety and protection. However, House Bill 53, in our opinion, does not help the citizens of Hawaii. In fact, it could harm them. There are even lawsuits that are still active in the automotive space with regard to right to repair. So these questions come up often as far as who can acquire the knowledge, and only authorized repair providers conduct their business. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. In addition to the testifiers we had on Zoom, we also have Lisa McCabe from CTIA in opposition, Daniel Mustico from Outdoor Power Equipment in opposition, Chad Lukowitz from Marine Retailers of America and National Marine Manufacturers Association. In opposition, Joan Wolfel, Far West Equipment Dealers Association. In opposition, Jonathan Porter, Associated Equipment Distributors. In opposition, Tia Sutton from Truck and Engine Manufacturers Association. In opposition, and Michael Rice, an individual, in support. Members, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to House Bill 933, which requires the Public Utilities Commission to use Universal Service Fund monies to provide free telecommunications access to certain information for individuals with print disabilities. First up, we have Chair Leo Asuncion of the Hawaii Public Utilities Commission in person with comments.
I apologize, Chair couldn't make it today. Good afternoon, Chair Peroso, Vice Chair Capella, and members of the Higher Education Technology Committee. My name is Andrew Okabe. I represent the Hawaii Public Utilities Commission. I signed our written testimony offering comments on HB 933. I'm available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have, James Gashel from the National Federation of the Blind of Hawaii on Zoom, in support.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and committee members. I am James Gashel, testifying for the National Federation of the Blind of Hawaii in favor of this legislation. I would also note that although the bill doesn't actually show it this way, it is part of the Deaf and Blind Task Force package. The Senate bill does show it this way, and they're identical. We're seeking through this bill better access to information that normally shows up only in print. And again, this would be information in formats that are usable by people with print disabilities. The type of information we're talking about is public notices, daily newspapers, magazines, emergency alerts, warnings, weather warnings, job listings, and more. Now, I know these things are readily available when people can read print. They're very hard to get when you can't. And telecommunications facilities are the answer to this. That's where the Public Service Commission comes in. I mentioned the formats being information in audio and braille formats. Imagine listening to newspaper articles or public notices, etc., rather than just reading them in print, especially when you can't read the print. This bill is really enabling. If it passes, it would, the Public Service Commission would have a rulemaking to design the program, and I would look at Georgia, Texas, and 10 other states on the mainland as models for this. Mahalo for hearing this bill. We support it and hope you will do so too.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next, we have Virgil Stinnett, individual in support on Zoom.
Not present.
Okay, and the final person we have on Zoom to testify is Katie Kelm, individual in support.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. My name is Katie Keim, and don't worry about my last name. It's a tough one. I appreciate your time and willingness to hear my testimony and others in support of House Bill 933. I am a businesswoman locally in Hawaii who became blind at the age of 37. And along with many other factors, the loss of access to important critical business journals, current news, and other information, as Mr. Gashel stated, became a greater loss in many ways to my continuing to work in my career. At the point with which I did regain rehabilitation and an ongoing career, which I'm still involved in today, the access through telephonic services became vital to my daily information access to participate in community service, business, and other activities as an equal citizen in the state of Hawaii. I can also, if I'm traveling nationally, listen to newspapers and journals and local critical emergency alerts in those locations through my phone access at that point. It's really enabled me to be a full participant and a taxpayer in our community locally in Hawaii, as well as through our country. I appreciate your time for listening, and I hope you'll seriously consider supporting this process of continuing funding for the telephonic access of the important information. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Members, are there any questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on to House Bill 963, which appropriates general fund monies that are required to match federal monies for broadband programs. It appropriates monies received by the state from the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act for the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. So first up on Zoom, first up in person, we have Bert Lum from DBED.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Bert Lum. I'm the State Broadband Coordinator in DBED. I'm here for Chris Sarayasu, our Director. Let me say that we support this bill, and of course I stand by this testimony. And this is an important program that is being basically funded through the federal government. But this match is really essential because it is a requirement in the deployment of the BEAD program. BEAD is Broadband Equity Access and Deployment. And so as a requirement, I think this is an essential element to make the program work. So thank you for this opportunity to testify. And of course, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. And it's nice to see you in person. I hear you all the time. Next, we have Mr. Garrett Yoshimi from University of Hawaii in support. He's in person.
Yeah, sorry. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, and thank you for letting me jump from virtual space to in person. I take every advantage I can to see everybody in 3D. It's so much better. My name is Garrett Yoshimi, Vice President for IT and Chief Information Officer for the University of Hawaii, representing the statewide broadband interest. We've submitted testimony in support. I'll stand by the written testimony. Be very happy to answer any questions or provide any additional commentary for the committee. Thanks for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Daintree Bartoldas.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's okay. Daintree Bartoldas, Executive Director at the State Council on Development to Disabilities. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. We stand in strong support of this measure. I'd just like to highlight that individuals with intellectual and developmental disability often rely on others for their mobility and transportation, and being able to have good access to internet helps them with their independence. They're able to stay home, have telehealth from home. Right now there is a digital divide, and we're really hopeful that this bill goes through. It will really close that gap and for digital equity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next we have Sylvia Luke, Lieutenant Governor, in person, in support. I'm pretty sure you should have been at the top of that list, but
Aloha, good afternoon, Chair Peruso. I just wanted to say that. So Vice Chair Capella and members of the committee, in strong support, you have our written testimony. The reason why I wanted to come down is broadband is one of the things that we are working on. The reason why this bill is especially important is some of you folks may know, for individuals who were part of the legislature, the $33 million was part of the budget last year that we use ARPA funds. And I know you distinctly remember part of that because it was such a huge amount. And that amount of ARPA funds was supposed to be used to match the as a 75% match for the 25% match for the 75% that we could draw down from the federal government. Unfortunately, the last administration decided to use the ARPA funds for other things, and I think the we are still waiting for an accounting of how much ARPA funds are left, but in the meantime, we did not want to jeopardize the BEAD requirement for the 25%. So in strong support, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next we have Trevor Abarzua, Chamber of Commerce, in person. I am not seeing him, so we'll move on to our last testifier in person, Daniel Smith, in support.
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair, committee members. My name is Dan Smith. I'm here in my individual capacity. I teach at West Oahu, and in my academic work, I write on telecom policy issues and how to extend the internet. I think it's important that the state have money that they can use to match, because in some cases the private industry may not want to match it, and they may not think it's a good investment, but the state thinks it is a good investment. And furthermore, it gives influence on things like open access. You build something, you can allow all providers in there. And I know it's your discussion about how much, but I think order of magnitude is probably 50 million. The experts will give you some numbers too, but that's the kind of order of magnitude I think that it should have. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? Also testifying, I should mention, who were not able to join us, Louis Salavaria submitted testimony from DBET, or Budget and Finance, Eric Abe from Hawaii Primary Care Association submitted testimony in support, and Janine Suki from Hawaiian Telecom submitted testimony in support. Members, are there any questions? If not, I have a question for the Lieutenant Governor. Can you outline for the committee just kind of a broad sketch of what we recently talked about in terms of the first component, the middle component, and the last component of broadband expansion?
Yeah, so I'm just going to do a brief overview. So the type of broadband expansion that we're looking at and working with both the digital or the broadband office and the University of Hawaii is that the unfortunate reality is Hawaii has been the center point where the trans-Pacific cables have landed because technology was not sufficient for wires to go from Asia all the way to the US continent. So Hawaii benefited from the fact that we were in the middle of Pacific. Unfortunately, the reality is that the last 15 systems, the technology has caught up to a point where the last 15 systems that were sanctioned in both the Europe and Asian countries have bypassed Hawaii and is going directly from Asia to the US. So what does that mean for Hawaii? That means, for our purposes, a lot of our antiquated cable systems or cable lines may be jeopardized. In 2019, the cable line between Kauai and Oahu has been cut. So a lot of residents on Kauai lost internet service for almost a day that Hawaiian Telecom was able to rectify after a while. But can you imagine if our cable systems or cable lines or internet service goes down in the urban core or even in the rural areas, it could jeopardize not just educational equity, healthcare, but it could jeopardize our economy, the banking system and everything else, or even flying. Look what happened to Southwest. Everything could be jeopardized and commerce could be jeopardized. So we're trying to ensure that our infrastructure is stabilized, and we have a unique opportunity. Before COVID, internet access and broadband expansion and reliability has been something that we thought about in the back of our minds, but it never came to the forefront until the last 2 years when everything moved to remote, things went to virtual remote testimony, and even telehealth became the centerpiece of how we do business. And we could never go back. Even now, when you're doing hearings, we're not doing complete in-person. You're accommodating individuals who have physical disability or in remote areas to participate in this process. So because of those things, we can never go back to where we were. And we have learned so much that, hey, we are going to need reliable internet service. We are going to need redundancy. We are going to need expansion to bring costs down, to make sure that the most remote areas have just as much internet service as people right here in downtown. The interesting thing right now is because it's just not us, the federal government also recognized that. So there are potential for hundreds of millions of federal government funding that we have never seen in the past. So in the past, that we receive $115 million in ARPA funds that can be used for broadband expansion without any state match. The next set of state match, which we're talking about here, is BEAD funding, which requires a 25% state match. So 115 plus potentially 150, we're looking at anywhere between 200 to something more. And then there are other funding that both Bert and Garrett knows about that we can apply for and we can try to access. So that's the lay of the land, and we have a unique opportunity to try to make sure that people in Naalehu, and it's like just dark between Waimea and Naalehu for miles, right? For an hour drive, there's nothing and no internet. Or people in Lanai had an opportunity to have internet access for critical care. So this is kind of in a nutshell, and that's a little bit more than I wanted to go into and take up a lot of your time. But
Thank you for
if
sharing.
if you folks have any questions, call on us, call on Garrett, call on Bert, because we are trying to work together to maximize the federal funding available to the state of Hawaii.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? It's really a pleasure to be here. I feel like, I'm so proud of you guys. Every time I come, I'm like,
Okay, that's enough.
my children.
I have an additional question for Mr. Yoshimi, or Garrett Yoshimi. Chief Information Officer Yoshimi. It's a long title. So I guess my question is, can you explain to the committee the role that UH is playing in this process, and kind of just briefly the historical context for that role,
Okay.
and how you see it moving forward?
So in short, the university is playing a statewide coordination role to help with coordination and orchestration of all of these different federal funding programs that are directed specifically at broadband. This dates back for probably 2 or 3 years now, when in fact some of the federal legislation was being conceived. We were fortunate that our senators in DC were on this topic and were very influential in getting some specific set-asides isn't the right word, they want allocations that were appropriate for Hawaii, and in fact language in the federal legislation that includes stuff like submarine fiber optic cables. So it's super good that we had that level of support from our congressional delegation. The background is that, over the, again, about the last 2 or 3 years, we had been working very closely with the Ige administration over the time dating back to his time as a legislator, to make sure that we could do the best that we could for technology within Hawaii. This includes participation by my boss and the former CIO for the University of Hawaii, David Lassner, as co-chair of the Hawaii Broadband Task Force about 12, 13 years ago now. The really amazing thing, the task force was legislatively formed and created a set of recommendations that actually are still valid today. It's really great. It was broad community input, broad community involvement, and good inclusion by not only education, healthcare, and business, but all of the carriers in the space as well. So everybody's really, it's an important topic for us. Back in 2008, when the report came out, the report said everybody should have access to gigabit broadband. And at that point in time, most people were like, yeah, I can do my Netflix, I can do my Amazon, I don't care. But as Lieutenant Governor noted, the recent pandemic just brought it front and center for everybody to make sure it's important. Anyway.
Thank you. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted them to understand. Excellent. So, members, are there any additional questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on to House Bill 1408, which establishes the Digital Equity Grant Program to award grants to applicants to deploy digital equity projects to covered populations in the state and appropriates funds. So, first up, again, we have Mr. Lum of DBET in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I have to apologize. I was a little nervous because I didn't realize the Lieutenant Governor was watching me, so I feel a little bit more relaxed now.
You're better now.
Bert Lum, I'm the State Broadband Coordinator, and here for Chris Sadayasu, Director. We support this bill, and I wanted to add that, you might say, well, there's all this money coming in from the federal government. Why do you need a digital equity grant program? Well, the timing for a lot of that money is probably going to be in the 2024, mid-2024 area of time frame. And my sense of the deployment and the availability of these funds are going to be predicated by the fact that a lot of these digital equity projects are being done by smaller nonprofits and more specific into local areas that need things like digital literacy, affordability, access to devices, digital navigators. So this particular program is really kind of geared to those specific, really local needs that we're identifying throughout the community. And what I did was today, as I brought members of the broadband HUI to this particular hearing. So if there are any questions about what exactly do the folks do in terms of classes and outreach, what they can probably give you some good examples. But I stand in support of this bill, and again, available for any questions.
Thank you. Kind of lost my space a little bit. Next we have Kieran Polk from the Kapolei Chamber of Commerce on Zoom in support. Oh, in person. Oh, hi. Okay. So confusing.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Karen Polk. I'm the Executive Director of the Kapolei Chamber of Commerce, and we stand in support of House Bill 1408. As Bert mentioned, there's some programming that's already in place in my community on the west side, and this would just help that continuum. And there's a need. On the Waianae Coast, for example, we have 77% connectivity compared to like the east side of the island at 93%. And even in those populations that do have the access, as Bert mentioned, there's digital literacy issues, access to, access to computers. All those needs need to be addressed sooner than that timestamp of the BEAD funding that's coming. So it's a huge need for my community on the west side, and I appreciate your time and your consideration. Mahalo.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up we have CIO Garrett Yoshimi from University of Hawaii. In support and in person.
Yes, I love it here. So I'll skip my title and save you 2 minutes in the transcript. Standing in support of strong support of the intent of the bill. We do have recommendations in terms of coordination with, and there, as you've heard, there are multiple programs going on, especially in the space of digital equity. So we think it is absolutely critical to make sure that all the investments are properly coordinated and properly used so that we can maximize the benefit of not only state funding, but federal funding in this area. One of the things I wanted to say in particular about the digital equity efforts is the effort to build broadband is not just about infrastructure and technology. And the effort that the words that we have been using are access to meaningful access to broadband, so that folks not only have technology access to get the service, but have the ability to effectively use it to actually make a difference in their lives. Thanks for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. The final person testifying on this measure is Daniel Smith, also in person, in support. I love that everybody has changed their minds and decided to join us.
That's, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. The important part of digital equity really is outreach, human contact, and the university is going to be mostly in charge of the physical infrastructure, but in terms of training and devices, the two legs of the three-legged stool that will give us broadband access. It's also true that these efforts, small-scale training that people have talked about, community efforts, will also involve community consultations, which are an important part of the BEAD program. If you don't do, and Hawaii will of course do it, but if a state doesn't do careful consultation with the communities on the ground, the money won't be released for running the cable to their house. And so I think the flexibility and coordination of a program through Bert's office will get these consultations started, and the need is large. In the NTIA community report last year, there's about 41,000 households in Hawaii that don't have computers. In terms of telehealth, these are not the optimum device, and also there are as many as perhaps 68,000 who don't have internet. So I think there's an opportunity to get things started early, And I apologize for talking too much. It's a disease of professors. Thank you.
You're fine. Thank you very much for your testimony. Members, are there any questions? Brett Martin.
This is a question for Bert Lum, please, or any other HUI members that feel they can answer it. I'm interested in my district, which includes Waimanalo, which I think is an area that's underserved, but I don't have a good understanding of exactly what they will get. So for example, the homestead is serviced by Sandwich Isles, right?
Correct.
Would a existing private company go in and provide wires and give them either free or discounted servicers, or what actually happens should my community get a grant?
There's a multitude of programs that are rolling out that address everything from access to affordability to digital literacy. As an example, for the Hawaiian Homelands, Sandwich Isles is actually a telecom provider. They do participate in something called the ACP, Affordable Connectivity Program. So any household that qualifies could get $75 off, $75 off their internet bill. Now that is again something that they would need to participate in, and then Sandwich Isles will need to take that off of their bill. So that's a process that I think from a digital navigator or trying to help somebody actually go through that verification process, that's kind of the human piece that Dan is referring to. Now, as you start to expand across Waimanalo, we put in a community network up at Puhonua, Waimanalo, and that was an example of trying to enable connectivity for a community that was previously homeless but found some land in the foothills of the Ko'olaus. And we were able to get Hawaiian Tel to run some fiber to the location, and then we put some Wi-Fi transmitters and access points. So that's another solution that could perhaps satisfy that particular community. So there's a variety of different kinds of opportunities that I think this funding will enable. Through the BEAD money, as we look at perhaps unserved and underserved households within the Waimanalo area, what would happen is Garrett and his team would be issuing an RFP, seeing if the carriers would be able to address that directly. And then what we would follow along with that is how do we come up with the digital equity programs that would then support those particular households that are now getting access. So it's a really a close connection between the work that the university is doing as well as the Broadband Digital Equity Office. And so we're trying to match the access piece along with the digital equity and the wraparound service to drive adoption. And basically it's the democratization of technology. How do we make this available to all of Hawaii? Yep.
CEO Yoshimi, can you add to that? Talk a little bit about the new federal funds available through Senator Schatz's work.
Yeah, read my mind. Thank you, Chair. In particular for the areas, so there are multiple sources of funds. So we've talked a lot about the digital equity funds as well as the BEAD program funds today. There are also, and again, the benefit of having a senator in the process, there's also funds that are allocated specifically to the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, specifically for the benefit of Native Hawaiians. So that part of that effort is in fact already underway to do some assessment in the area that it right now is primarily covered by Sandwich Isles. And our understanding is, I'll put this delicately, not exactly everything was built according to what was planned and funded to get built. So the thing that's important with these funds that are getting applied now is under the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, part of the current funds are to make a full assessment of what's there so that they can use the rest of the funds that are allocated specifically for that purpose to apply directly to the Hawaiian Homelands locations. The great thing about the way the funds are set up, the BEAD funds and the Tribal Connectivity Program funds, which is the DHHL stuff, actually are allowed to overlay so that we can make sure that there are no gaps as a result. So we actually get 2 shots on DHL properties. Hopefully that helps.
Great, thank you so much. Rep. Capella.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone from the Broadband HUI that may be able to talk a little bit more about digital equity and those specific programs?
I'd like to talk about that.
Perfect.
My name is Ka'ala Souza. I'm a community member. I've been working with the Broadband HUI for a while. Waimanalo. I think, in fact, I've been doing classes over the last 12 or 14 months, in-person basic computer classes. If you guys don't have one in your area, please hit me up. They're free. We're giving out free computers. We're doing free classes. But I think I've been in most of you guys' places. Pretty sure. I was in Ka'u with Auntie Jessie. I've been in Hilo and every island except for Niihau, I think. So most of your places, Waimanalo. So I'll be in Waimanalo again at a Kupuna class on Friday at the Waimanalo Homestead there. And just for the record, Waimanalo Homestead Kupuna are getting 12 megabits per second down. And they don't know if that's good or bad. And they go, and I say, this is terrible. This is just ridiculous. I'm on Molokai and I'm getting 0.9 megabits per second down in a business office. And so the challenge though is to not think about broadband access and the broadband hui just in light of the hardware infrastructure. So I appreciate your question. I count on Bert and Garrett to hold down that seat in the canoe to make sure that we have access to super fast 100 megabits per second plus. You know, it'd be great, you guys. But it's the lack of training and the lack of devices. So we're getting refurbished devices. I've been working with some people, AHEC, Area Health Education, people are talking about telehealth. The libraries are big on this. And so we've been doing 001 classes, is what we call it, not 101, but basic classes. And so there's different programs that we've got about 1,000 people over the last year. So tell me where you're from. I'll tell you if we did a class. Where are you at? Kapolei, yeah, did the one at the CNHA, Waianae, Nanakuli, Maili. Where else? Eva Beach is coming up. I was just at a community meeting recently. Most of you guys, I think I covered. Wahiawa, except for Wahiawa. Thank you for being the chair and me not, me flexing and then failing on that right there. But then I give you this offer right now. I need is people and a place, and we can hook you up if you have internet access. And so those are some of the programs that are very grassroots. And so we've done 1,000 people. We've been challenging all the rest of the states in the nation to a digital literacy challenge. Right now, I think Hawaii is one of the first, we are the first state to have digital literacy numbers. So if you're talking about where we're at in terms of before, after, we're the first state that did we have state level data on where our digital literacy is at. People in the rest of the country know what we're doing here. We're the first state with the state libraries to have more advanced online training with Skill Finders, a company out of working with Adobe in Australia. And so it's not just the level 001, we're talking about workforce, remote work, online entrepreneurialism, but you gotta start with something. So you need a device, you need to have broadband internet access, Garrett and Bert and the rest of the broadband hui, but you need to know how to use it. So we can have the fastest internet, but if you don't know how to drive stick and you have a Ferrari, you're in trouble. So love to do some classes for you, let me know. Question?
And then Colin, I just wanted you to point out, with what you folks are doing and with this specific bill, this will allow you and other people like yourself who are working on digital equity and filling that gap to be able to do that work a lot quicker.
Oh,
correct?
And to scale. So this is the big deal. So we hit 1,000 people, just me and my wife and my kids, showing up doing these classes. So that was a lot of traveling around. AERP jumped in with some funds to pay for my travel. Most of that was free. Kamehameha School, shout out to them saying, yeah, and it wasn't just Hawaiian areas and communities, but it was everywhere. So I've been in Hana. I did a class in Kalaupapa in November for the National Park Services there. But like Papakolea, we tell them, you guys are already working on your own digital equity initiative. That's what I told them. I said, you got somebody like me coming in, where you get people giving devices, and you get training, and then you guys help us with the ACP, make sure that everybody in your community are getting connected. Key project in Kahulu'u. I said, you guys already have a digital equity initiative. In case anybody asks, you guys have a digital equity initiative. Molokai, the homestead over there, the Kupuna program there. So there's digital equity initiatives in communities that are grassroots, and I think what we want to try and do is scale. And so just multiply. Just put this into perspective, and I think most of us, if you're on Zoom, if you're on a computer already, you guys are all on computers now, we forget what it's like to not know how to do it. Almost every single time I do a class, and about 50-60% of my class is going to be over 50, over the 1,000 people. But almost every single time somebody will say, Ka'ali, you gave me a mouse that's broken. And I said, Uncle, I'm sorry, it's just upside down. It's just upside down. And so the idea for us is to get the skills and the devices. We're giving them refurbished devices, but that would be the scale. That would be the scale.
Thank you.
Let me know if you have any more questions. I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Souza, what were the reactions from the kupuna in the area of Kapolei? I mean, and what was the turnout? I mean, I think having these classes is super important for our kupuna to get connected.
Yeah.
What was the turnout out there, and what were their reactions?
Yeah. So the kind of classes that I do is, again, it's very, very basic. So usually people come in are afraid of computers.
Right.
Or they've tried it before and they've given up, or they're frustrated with the frustration that their opuna are giving them, right? They're rolling the eyes and sighing and stuff. The class that I did in Kapolei was with at the CNHA office, and they had also connected us to another class in Maili, so we'd done classes over there. Done classes in Waianae with kupuna, but most of the time what happens is people are coming in scared and nervous, and we just say, you can do this. You know, this is the big thing. We had the class in Kapolei with CNHA, we had about 12, we did 2 classes there, 12 to 20 people in that side. Waianae, we've hit probably over 100 people already with Uncle Joe Lapilio and the Waianae Coast Comp guys. And I've had one lady, I remember I have her on video because I told her, can you just tell me? She says, thank you so much for doing these classes. This is the 3rd time I tried to go to a class. So the other couple times where I've been to classes where people were already know stuff. And so I just felt like I couldn't. So she's crying, saying, I've been praying to God for a class like this. And she's holding a laptop that we got for her. And so she's walking away with it. But the kupuna across the state are the same, and they're coming in nervous, but they want to learn. If they want to learn, we're good. One kupuna in Molokai, they had Rosie Davis they had a mini health clinic and a food drive. And so she walked out of my class was last, so she had a dozen eggs, a loaf of bread, and a laptop as she walked out. And that was amazing.
Awesome.
So, but it's across the board. It's not just kupunas 18 and over. I'm telling you that 30% of our state can't use a mouse. Prove me wrong. I don't think you can. I think this is 30%. I would love to take a little basic computer skills test of the legislature. I got links for you guys. But I want you to lead. I want you to do. We can. I've already challenged all the other states, and so we're not bad. We're actually doing pretty well nationwide, and we're doing good. So thank you very much for asking that question.
Thank you. And lastly, Chair, I did want to recognize Karen for all the work you're doing for Kapolei area, for Broadway equity. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, I have a question.
Martinez?
So when are you doing it in Ever Beach, and
Yeah,
where, and what group of population?
Yeah, I was just at Ever Beach last week. There was a Ever Beach community homestead meeting, and because for the new homestead for DHHL, the new homestead, and everybody was emotional at that meeting. But I talked to a lot of the homestead people there, and I'm saying, hey, I'm not in your guys' area. I haven't done any classes here. All I need is people and a location for us, a roof, and some. We don't even need power actually, because we can use a generator. I've done a class in Waimanalo on the beach with Auntie Blanche, with people who were previously homeless at her place with no power, no internet. So they have my phone number. I just met them last week. We're trying to figure that out. It's really that kind of thing where they say, how do we have a class one? Just call me. And then we can do that. And so we can scale we can definitely talk right after.
Yeah, I have a group of kupunas that probably would be willing to undergo the classes that you'll be teaching.
Yeah, this is the thing. To undergo the class is kind of the thing for them. I had one lady who came to my class, and she was at Waimanalo Health Center, as a matter of fact. We did a lot of stuff with them to prep for telehealth. And I said, hey, we're doing a free computer class. She goes, oh, I have an appointment. I go, what's your appointment? She was at the dentist. I'm like, you'd rather go to the dentist than to my free computer class. And that was what it was. But we'd love to have you we'll talk after for sure.
Yeah. I know 2 group of kupunas that will be doing the class if you are available.
I'm available. Just say yes. Huh?
Yes.
No, I'm already busy.
You should talk after.
Yeah, well, this was talk for sure
Okay.
after. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? Thank you. So we're going to move on to our final bill, HB 1497, which establishes a framework to regulate controllers and processors with access to personal computer data. It establishes that a violation of the Consumer Data Privacy Act constitutes an unfair method of competition and unfair and deceptive acts or practices in the conduct of any trade or commerce. Authorizes any person injured by a violation of the Personal Consumer Data Act to bring a civil action against a controller or processor. So first up, we have Allison Uyoka of the Hawaii Insurers Council in person with comments.
Good afternoon, Chair Peruso, Vice Chair Capella, members of the committee. Allison Uioka for Hawaii Insurers Council. We're asking for an amendment to exempt us from this law because in 2021, the legislature passed a law specifically for property and casualty insurers as well as health insurers, according to the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, and promulgated a model law that covers our entire industry for regulation for just this kind of thing. So it's easier for us to comply with one law than many, and we already have many. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Brian Yee, Attorney General, with comments on Zoom. Not on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Ben Krebs. I'm here for the Department of the Attorney General. The department supports the intent of this bill and also has suggested a potential clarifying amendment regarding the applicability of the new chapter. And I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Tina Yamaki, Retail Merchants of Hawaii, on Zoom in opposition. Not present. Moving on to the next testifier, Wendy Hildebrand, Hawaiian Electric, in opposition on Zoom. Not present.
They are present.
Are present. We can come back to Ms. Hildebrand. So we're going to come back to Ms. Hildebrand. The next testifier we have is Matt Sujimura.
I apologize. I thought that.
No problem. Please proceed.
Okay. I apologize. So thank you, Chair Peruso, Vice Chair Capella, and members of the committee, both for considering my written testimony and for the opportunity to testify virtually. I'm Wendy Hildebrand, Managing Counsel and Privacy Officer at Hawaiian Electric. Hawaiian Electric is not opposed to the vast majority of the bill, and as the company's privacy officer, I would say we're already compliant with most of it. There are a few provisions, though, that are novel, and I believe will create compliance challenges for ours and other local businesses. One example I'd like to highlight is the right to access that I discussed a little bit in the written testimony. We have, as do many companies, internal notes attached to customer accounts. So our customer representatives keep track of conversations they have with customers, customer history, conversations they may have with supervisors, any number of people within the company. Under the bill as written, these notes would at a minimum include covered personal information, if not qualify as such in their entirety. And we're fine upon receiving a request to confirm that we have these account notes and servicing consumers' accounts, along with other information we might be collecting about customers. But there really is no justification for requiring us to provide copies of these internal notes to customers. And I think doing so could create all sorts of problems. This issue was attempted to be fixed in the Virginia and Colorado bills by limiting the right to copies of information to only information originally provided by the consumer. But the bill's left an ambiguity in that's still in this bill in HB 1497 and Section 3, which along with the right to confirm whether a business has the customer's data, it also includes the right to access. And since most of our data is in proprietary systems, providing customers access to the data would necessarily require us to provide them copies of the data. This is just one of the examples of internal inconsistencies or challenges that remain in the bill. I think it's premature on the mainland. It's only been enacted in the it's only taken effect in the last few weeks. And I think the mainland is working out some of these challenges. I think adopting it at this point would be premature and would require Hawaii businesses and consumers to work through these issues prematurely and unnecessarily. My written testimony highlights a few other areas on which we have issues and would request consideration for amendment if the committee chooses to pass it through, but we would ask that the bill not be passed. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you for your testimony. Moving on, we are going to hear from Matt Sujimura from State Farm in opposition in person. Perhaps not here. Okay. And the last testifier we have is Dylan Hoffman from TechNet on Zoom in opposition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dylan Hoffman on behalf of TechNet. I'm the Executive Director for the Southwest. And we must respectfully oppose HB 1497, but greatly appreciate the opportunity to testify today. And we're very supportive of the intent of the bill. Our member companies place a high priority on consumer privacy. We've been involved with a number of bills, as mentioned, on the mainland. We're also very supportive of a federal standard. But in the absence of congressional action on this issue, we understand the need to move forward. We just asked the committee to ensure interoperability with some of the existing models. And this bill makes a couple of significant deviations from those. So first and foremost, I believe the right to cure is incredibly important to our companies. It really helps ensure that we're able to comply efficiently and effectively. It also allows us the ability to seek guidance from the regulator and ensure that we are complying with the law as intended, as passed by the legislature. The other thing I'll point out is the private right of action, which will lead to incredibly unnecessary litigation and increased costs for businesses of all sizes, not just technology companies, but businesses across Hawaii. And so we respectfully request you to hold the bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Members, are there any questions? Seeing none, we are going to recess for decision making. Reconvening for decision-making on several bills relating to technology. So members, on HB 53, I think the concerns raised by those who submitted testimony, especially around safety, privacy, and security, were serious enough to warrant deferring this bill indefinitely. So we're going to do that. Moving on to HB 933. Chair's recommendation is to pass this bill, adding language to provide clear authorization to implement the state USF as requested by the PUC, providing authority to draw from the state USF, and providing a budget authorization to expend funds via a set ceiling increase in the future. Defecting the date to July 1st, 3000. Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Chair for the vote. Vice Chair for the vote? Or Chair for the vote?
Thanks, Chair. Voting on HB 933, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Martin?
Aye.
Representative Martinez?
Aye.
Representative Matayoshi?
Aye.
Representative Quinlan?
Aye.
Representative Todd?
Aye.
Representative Woodson?
Aye.
Representative Garcia?
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 963, to provide matching funds for federal broadband funding. Chair's recommendation is to pass this bill out of committee, defecting the date to July 1st. June 30th, 3000. Questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 963, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Noting the presence of all members, Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 1408, which establishes a state digital equity program. My recommendation is to pass with a simple amendment that strikes the phrase or comprises commercially sensitive information from section 6B. I agree with OIP's analysis that this language is unnecessarily vague and broad, and these protections are provided elsewhere in state law. Questions, comments, or and defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1408, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Members, are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to our final bill, HB 1497. I think this is important privacy legislation, and I think we can do this in a thoughtful and informed way after seeing the process that other states have undergone. My recommendation is to pass this with amendments. This involves striking, quote, and to access the personal data in section 3.1, deleting the private right of action included in section 10C, including a 30-day notice and cure period, and defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Questions, comments, or concerns?
I was originally a no on this measure, Chair, but I appreciate your amendment, so I will be a WR.
Thank you so much. Any additional comments or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1497, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Noting the reservations of Representative Quinlan, are there any other reservations? Rep. Todd, reservations? Any noes?
No.
Representative Garcia, no vote. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. This hearing is adjourned.